Hey guys, hey ladies, hey friends, hey foes. We just wanted to take a second to remind you that while we're okay swearing when little ears are listening, you might not be, and that's okay. So here's your chance to pause us and wait for nap time, or pop in your earbuds. We hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome to the podcast. This is Done Playing by the Rules. I'm Jenna.
And I'm Janelle.
What are we going to talk about?
I wish you didn't have a sweatshirt on so that I could see your hives when you talk about love and marriage today.
No, this one's good because I'm fired up and we'll get into that. Speaking of, if you guys don't know, you can watch us on YouTube. Our grandmothers do.
That's where grannies like to watch.
They want to see us. So if you are, you'll be able to see what I'm going to show. If not, we'll kind of describe it. So I just came back from hanging out at a friend's porch because I had to get out of the house. My husband and I were not on the best terms, and I came back and he had my podcast little situation set up and a tulip and a note. I have not read the note, but let's just say shit hit the fan before I left. So, things are a little tough when you get a note from
you haven't even read it. You're just like, I need to record before I give you my forgiveness.
And I don't know if I'm quite ready to read it.
So Jenna and I were talking about this today because we're both, I don't know. I used to think when I first got married that like these hard parts would last forever. And Jenna and I both agreed that the first year of marriage was so hard. And I remember thinking like, if this is the life sentence, my aunt always calls marriage a life sentence with no parole. And I said, if this is the life that I have to live forever in that first year, I was like, this is a mess. Like, I cannot do this. But now after, I don't know, we've been married for 8 years, I think, I realized that we're in a bad week. And you're probably in a bad week or maybe you're in a bad month, maybe you're in a bad year. And I honestly, if you stay married for 40 years, 5 or 10 of them could be bad overall. Hopefully they're not all together, but nobody has 40 blissful years of marriage.
Or they're on some good ass drugs and I need a little dose of that.
I'm on
for me and my husband.
I'd have to go to like illicit street drugs to get any more drugs. I'm not on a lot of drugs and it's still hard.
Right? So yeah, we're going to talk about the ups and downs of marriage. I think you had something you wanted to share.
Oh yeah. I want to
start that, and then we'll kind of get into like our story a little bit, and then just talk some marriage shit with y'all.
Which I'm excited to hear the story too, because I didn't remember this until today. So I went back and edited our very first ever podcast that we were never planning to release. And now we're releasing it. And you said in there that you guys got engaged after 3 months. And I didn't realize that. And Josh and I did kind of like a similar whirlwind situation. And I don't recommend it, but it did work for us. So I wouldn't tell my sweet, like 18-year-old niece. I wouldn't tell her to do this. But it worked out okay. So, but the Instagram post I sent to Jenna today was from Sit With Wit. And she's at Sit With Wit on Instagram. Please don't assume that your partner or potential partner has the same beliefs about having children, money, monogamy, where to live, extended family and family involvement, or religion. Ask them and talk about it. And Josh and I did a really good job about talking about this early on, but now we're in that kind of, they call it the 7-year itch. And I think the reason is because you kind of have to, and I always say like, you have to renegotiate the contract. If you're with someone for a long period of time, you have to keep renegotiating the contract because it changes. You move, someone gets a new job, someone does this, someone goes from traveling to not traveling. The contract is kind of always changing. But Josh and I went on our first date and Josh said, I don't plan to have kids. And I said, well, I plan to have 3. And he was like, okay. And I was like, so if you really are sure you don't want kids, we are not going on another date. And like, so that was on the table from day one. And then like, he was like, I don't know, maybe I'd have kids if I found the right person. And I was like, okay, well, I'm having 3. Yes, we stopped at 2, but there was nowhere I was budging on having kids. There's no question.
And good for you for like standing your ground. It's like, I know so many people that have gotten into marriages and been like, well, I mean, we didn't really discuss it, but I don't think, and I'm like, oh, y'all got to discuss that. We discussed it and it's changed over the years. I think my husband wanted 1 and I wanted 4. So we're at 2 and we're good. So
and it changes.
It all changes. We were happy living in Texas. And then one day I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I just kind of got that itch. And he was like, let's go. It just kind of all changes. So let's talk about our stories. My husband and I met on Match.com before it was cool. It
I'm
was
so
like,
excited to hear this.
it was like in the early, I'm really bad with dates.
You are.
And yeah. We got married in 2011. So I guess we met in 2010. We dated for 3 months and then we got engaged. And I was in a previous relationship for like 5 years. And my mom was kind of like if you get married, I'll support you kind of thing. My dad was like, but I think anyone for my dad, he would have been like, hard
Yeah.
no. And then Brandon told me, that's my husband, that after he proposed to me, he told me that he had asked my mom. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what did she say? Because I knew she was kind of iffy about my previous boyfriend of 5 years. And he was like, oh, she was all for it. And then he texted my mom and she called me and she was all excited. And I was like, wait, you're not questioning this? It's only been 3 months. And she was like, oh no, baby, this is right. And thank God for her. 3 months. Like she'd probably met Brandon a handful of times. My dad had only met him, I think, once. So he gave him his blessing, but he was still a little unsure.
Yeah.
And he had just moved away to Florida, my dad. So it was hard for him to judge that. But my dad was very supportive of me. And so he trusted my instincts and everything. And it's funny because one of my good friends, I called to tell her. First, I just sent her a picture of the ring. And she was like, no. Like she hadn't even met Brandon. And she was like, no. And then she called me and she was like, are you joking? And I was like, I don't know. Am I? And she was like, well, the thing is with you, it wouldn't surprise me. And she was like, you would go from like a 5-year relationship to being engaged after 3 months.
Yep.
And then we got married within about a year. I think we started dating in like October or November and we got married that next December. So we had a winter wedding. Yeah. So that's how we met and got started. And here we are. Once again, I'm really
happily ever after.
9.5 years later. And we'll get into where we are now in a little bit. Let's hear yours.
So Josh and I was a waitress at a very well-known steakhouse in Minneapolis. Josh came in for a business dinner. He almost got the other waitress, so he always jokes like, I wish I had gotten Sarah when we're like teasing each other.
Yeah.
And I took his table and it was him and like 5 older guys. And Josh was significantly younger than everyone. And I said to my manager, I said, that guy's going to leave me his number. And I made it a rule to never, because we had a lot of like professional athletes and stuff that came through. And I made it a point to just like straight up never date customers. I had been in a similar like 3-year relationship. And we had broken up right before Thanksgiving the year before. And Josh and I met, I want to say in February. We went on our first date in April. He left his business card and I never called him, but I texted him and was like, yeah, I'm getting off work. And he was like, oh, I think I've told you this. I love this story.
Yes.
Oh, I'm staying in this hotel. You should come by for a drink. And I was like,
a drink? Okay.
Okay, I'm going to come to your hotel, stranger that travels for work that lives in Chicago. I'm going to come to your hotel in Minneapolis for a drink. Like, no. First of all, I don't drink. Second of all, no. And he was like, oh, well, I'm going to Canada for a month tomorrow. So tonight or never. And I was like, second lie. No, thank you. I was like, call me when you get back. And I was like, that's the end of that. And then a month later, he called me when he got back and we went on a date. And our first date was terrible. And then we started talking on like, were we on AIM? No, we weren't. What was the messenger between?
BlackBerry Messenger?
There was some messenger on your computer, but like it was in that same time frame because Josh had a BlackBerry. There was some Apple messenger that was like AIM.
Okay.
And so we started talking on that and he had such great, I remember saying that his grammar was so good and he never mixed up the yours, like your.
That's a big thing.
That I was like, oh, yes. And so we started talking and he was funny and interesting. And when I broke up with my boyfriend before him, I said, my next boyfriend has to want to travel, want to move around, and I want to be a stay-at-home mom. So he has to be on board with that. And like, here comes Josh, like travels the world, wants to move around all the time. And then once I convinced him we were having kids, it was always like, you're staying home. And I was like, I'm staying home. So we dated for like a year. He bought me an engagement ring really early on, but we didn't get engaged right away. And then we broke up for like 2 months. And then he came groveling back. I still have the email. So I'd like to show it
Ooh.
to him once in a while, where he like wrote to me, please, I'll do whatever it takes. Da, 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 da. And so then we got back together, and within a week of getting back together, we rented a townhouse together, got engaged, because I told him I'd never live with someone I wasn't engaged to. Got engaged. I got pregnant.
Wait.
Like
You
with
had sex before marriage?
I did. I did. Just with Josh. I hope
Sorry, Grandma.
hopefully the birth control episode is already aired, so you know that's not true. um and so we got pregnant. I actually miscarried that baby, which was one of our hardest times. And then we got married like 2 months later, after we got back together, moved in together, and got engaged. I think we were engaged for 3 months and got married.
Okay, I have a question for you.
Yeah?
So it kind of reminded me, our first date was at Starbucks, because it was like, I'm meeting this guy off the internet. First of all, I was super embarrassed. So I only told my mom. All my friends, I told I met him through my cousin, which was a complete lie. Like I said, this was before, like this was like online dating was for like old people. And he was an hour late. He was updating me, but the barista kept giving me free drinks and put his number on the drink. So I always thought that was funny, and I tease him about it. But my question is, was it love at first sight for you? Because when Brandon walked into the Starbucks, I was sitting there, and he always tells me, you were so much more beautiful than your online pictures. And I always tell him, he walked in and I was like, not my type. And now, like, I am so attracted to him. But at the time, like, I had dated just a different type, and he came in and he was kind of like preppy and had like spiked hair. And I don't want to say was like into his looks, but he definitely took care of himself. And I had never really gone for that type. And now I absolutely love it, because he actually cares about his looks, and he cares about how our kids look and how I look. And he like appreciates that. But at this first meeting, it was like,
Josh is completely every guy I've ever dated. My mom says I date guys that look like cavemen. Like they all have that same like facial feature, and they're always big. And he fit like my normal type. But I remember on our first date, he was like, so I was a waitress, and so I worked like 5 p.m. to midnight usually. And so I had taken a 5-hour energy because I was so tired.
Oh my gosh.
I, at that time, was not looking for anything serious. And so I used to I used to pepper my dates with questions. And so I was just like, where do you want to live? How many kids do you want to have? Where do you want to this? And he was like, it was awful. It was like the worst job interview I've ever been on. And I just thought it was fun. But I remember he was wearing flip-flops. And it was April in Minnesota. And I was like, no, you don't wear flip-flops on a first date, because we like met at a restaurant. And he was wearing bedazzled jeans. And
wait, where were they bedazzled?
Like on like the back pockets. Remember when like Ed Hardy jeans
like
were in?
Buckle or something?
Yes. And so as soon as we got like serious, I made him get rid of them.
Yep.
On our first date, when we were walking out, he said, how is a girl like you still single? And I said, which will be like everyone who has listened to the podcast knows that my dad passed away. And I said, I will not get married until I meet someone that is as interesting as my dad. No. And so Josh is definitely as interesting as my dad, if not more. And so I think he says it was a terrible first date, but like he asked me that when we were leaving.
Right.
So, but then he also didn't try to kiss me on our first date, which had never happened to me before. So I was like, well, he's really not into me. Yeah. And so it was kind of this weird like balancing act. So I don't think either of us was love at first sight.
I love it. So yeah, don't expect the fairy tale. Like, and that's what I always tell like my single friends or even my brother, like it's not all a fairy tale.
No.
TV makes it seem like it, but it's not.
Yeah.
At all. So now we're in year, like I said, I'm pretty sure 9.5 going on. Yeah. Because this will be our 10 coming up. And I will say that year 1 and then 8-9, like currently, have been our hardest years.
1 and current.
Right? I feel like people either completely agree that year 1 is the hardest, or they're in such a blissful state that they think it's the absolute easiest. And it kicked our butt. The word divorce was used, and that I think
Yep.
was the only time it was used. We
Yep.
were struggling. I was working full time, and my husband was in school. So he had a little bit of, I don't know the right word for it, but like basically, like, he felt like he wasn't contributing to our family. I was paying the mortgage and everything, and that was a little hard on him. I did not mind it at all, but I think he comes from a very traditional household. So that was hard for him. And I was working super long hours. So I was exhausted. I was struggling with like some anxiety at the time. And of course, I wasn't on medication because I thought I could get off of it after my wedding. Not the best choice. And this is kind of when we really realized Brandon had an issue with alcohol. I personally never asked him to stop drinking because I didn't think that was my place, as well as I needed it to come from him. And so at the
Yeah.
time, it's something that we were struggling with in our marriage, as well as like, I like to be alone and I like my alone time. And then having someone by you 24/7
Ugh.
was such an adjustment for me that I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. Cause I lived with roommates, but we had our own bedrooms. And I'm like, I kind of want my own bedroom still.
I don't see anything wrong with, I mean, people who have their own bedrooms know what's up. That's probably why all
Right?
people like move to separate beds once.
Yeah. And now we're in, a good place in our marriage in terms of like we're very stable. We're both doing the careers that we want to do. Just like you, I told Brandon probably from like the first week we were dating, like, I want to be a stay-at-home mom. And so he worked his ass off, and so did I to make that happen. But I think a lot has changed since we met. Personally, I'm not the same person. Grief and trauma has really changed me.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I mean, Brandon even said, like, I've lost some of that like playful attitude. It's something that gets taken
Josh
away.
says the same thing. Josh says
Hmm.
the grief kills the person you married,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And he
Hmm.
says, I just want fun Janelle back. Like to just like, there's just a part of you that I
Hmm.
think, and maybe it comes back maybe in year 5, some more of the fun comes back.
Yeah.
I'm in 100% better place than I was a year ago, grief wise. So I
Hmm.
hope it will keep improving, but like there's definitely a part of you that your
Yeah.
spouse loses when you lose a parent.
I agree. And like the hardest thing to hear was Brandon said I had lost some of my spark, but
That's what Josh
he's,
says
yes.
too.
And it was
Yeah.
really hard to hear, but like he didn't mean it in a hurtful way. I mean, I was
Mhm.
truly asking because that's how I felt. And I just wanted to know if he could
The
see it.
outside world
So,
was seeing it. Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, like my mom was my comfort. She was my support. She's who I went to for advice, to vent, and everything. And now she's gone. And that has been really, really hard on our marriage because she was my support, but she was also my husband's. Like my husband
Yeah.
relied on her, and she knew some of his deepest secrets that besides her and I, no one else knows. And she really fought for our marriage. And so not having that support system behind us has been really hard, as well as throw a pandemic in there and
Yes.
toddlers and young kids. It's been hard. So yeah, it doesn't mean we're in a bad place per se. We're just in a really hard place. And like you said, it can sometimes be a week. Right now we're kind of in like a year. And it ebbs
Well,
and flows.
it's a hard year for everyone right now.
Yes.
And so even if you were in a great place, there is a heavy burden of stress on everyone right now. And
Mhm.
Brandon wasn't home every day a
No.
year and a half ago. Josh wasn't home, like, Josh was home one day
Yeah.
a week, like
Right.
some days not.
Yes.
And so
And trying to balance
you,
that is so hard. Like,
yeah,
I feel like everyone is in my space, even though it's everybody's home, because I'm not used to everyone being home. I'm used to coming home between school drop offs or during quiet time being home and being able to knock the house cleaning out. But now it's like, oh, I have to help my husband with this, or the kids need this. And it's everyone is home all the time. And it's so hard. And
yeah.
I see it as like, oh, you're being disrespectful. But I know that's not how he means it.
And even when they're
It's
trying
probably in
to
the letter.
help, yeah,
Oh my
when they're
gosh.
trying to help, you're tripping over each other. No matter
Yes.
how big your house is, we're not in tiny houses, and I'm
No.
still we're tripping over each other trying to help each other.
And
And
can we
I
just talk
sometimes
about
look,
how like dirty the house is now that everyone's home? Like,
oh my God, why is it so dusty all the
oh
time?
my
Like I feel like
gosh, it's
I
insane.
feel like I could just wipe dust.
Yes.
It's so dusty all the time. Get all of your
Yep.
skin cells out of here.
Exactly. Like,
I can't keep
take that
up.
shit outside. Like,
Take your dusty skin cells outside and shake them off.
exactly. Right. And do not come back in unless you are fully
Oh,
clothed, head to toe, and do not shed any more skin in my
it's
house.
so gross. I feel like all I do is dust because there's so many people in this
Yeah.
house.
That's where we're at currently.
So your hardest year was year one. And so our hardest year was definitely year one. And then the year I lost my dad, the 6 months after I lost my dad, those
Yeah.
were the two times when we threw around divorce.
Mhm.
The first
So
year
what
we got
happened
married
like
in
year 1?
so we got married in October 4th. So we got married on a Friday and I found out I was pregnant for the second time with now my Zach on Sunday because I didn't feel good. So we have been pregnant we did not get any of that hey, let's, enjoy
Mm.
being married time. Like our honeymoon, I was throwing up in parking lots because
Oh
I
my
was
gosh.
had such bad morning sickness. And so at Christmas time, we got in a fight about something and I was so pregnant and hormonal. I would be like 2 or 3 months pregnant at the time. I hadn't really emotionally recovered from the miscarriage that I had right before we got married. I mean, I was
Yeah.
like 6 weeks post miscarriage at our wedding. So I was still kind of dealing with that emotionally. And then Christmas came, something happened. I don't remember. I got in a fight with him or I got in a fight with his mom. And we were supposed to go to Florida to be with his mom that first Christmas. And
Mhm.
I made him go by himself and didn't go and
Did he
stayed
go?
home. Yeah. I was like, I'm not going. And he didn't want to go, but I was like, you're going. You're not
Mhm.
staying here. I need a break from you. And I need to figure out if we're going to stay married and raise this kid together or if we're going to cut it right now.
Yeah.
I had a couple, I call them I have my godmother and my fairy godmother are my two aunts that always work me through these things. And I
Mhm.
think I went and stayed with one of them for a little bit and just was telling her all the things that were hard and wrong and this and that. And she walked me through it. And we ended up he came back from Florida and things were better, but I was so sick that whole pregnancy.
Yeah.
And then Zach was born 3 weeks early and he had to stay in the NICU only for a day, but it was this weird, scary. And then I
Yeah,
went
that's so
through,
scary.
which I talk about on the mental health and meds episode. I went through 3 medications in the first 3 months that he was alive for my depression. And
Mm.
so it was just kind of a really chaotic year, but
Yeah.
we were literally talking about getting divorced Christmas. We got married in October, and by Christmas, we were talking about splitting up, and I was 2 months pregnant. And so it's like you said, I like being by myself. I'm
Mhm.
super independent. I like to do my own thing. I don't like anyone telling me what to do.
Oh, hell no.
And so
And don't get in the way of me doing what I need to do.
and it was all these
Yeah.
quick changes oh, now we need to buy a car that's suitable for a kid. So I have to get rid of
Mhm.
my car that I love that I bought with my own money for the first time in my life. And
Yeah.
we can't stay in this apartment you love. We have to get this house and we have to move to a school district. And we had to make all these really grown up decisions within months of being married to
Mhm.
prep for this baby. And it was just
Yeah.
this other person was 50% able to make the decisions that I want to make by myself. And it was just too quick of a
Yeah.
tide change from I make all my own decisions, make my own money, do what I want. And I lost my job 2 weeks before we got married. And then we found out I was pregnant. So it was well, I'm not going to go back to work. I'm throwing up all day. So then I'm immediately financially dependent on someone else. And
Yeah.
it was just one kind of I feel I'm going through a therapy session as I say this, but it was one blow to my ego after another, after another, after
Mhm.
another that made me feel I wasn't an independent woman anymore.
Yeah.
And part of marriage is sharing all of life's decisions and burdens together, but I just don't think I was bought into that yet.
How old were you when you got married? Both of you?
Josh was older than me. So Josh probably I think I was 28 and he was 32.
Are you glad
Because
you
he's
waited till you were a little older? That's not even older, but
absolutely, because I was so flaky before that. I didn't really even start becoming an adult until I was 23, 24.
yeah.
And then Josh and I met a few years after that. And I really knew what I wanted. The boyfriend I had before Josh, wonderful guy, wonderful family, everything great, but just never wanted to travel, just didn't have a lot of the
Mhm.
same interests as me, was really
Yeah.
into sports, which no.
Not your jam.
And so we were probably going to stay in Minnesota and we were going to not travel and we were just going to
Okay.
kind of do
Yep.
the thing. And I was like, this isn't what I want. And so
Same here. Yeah.
I'm glad that I waited and knew what I wanted. Cause when I left that relationship, I said those three things. I want to move around a ton. I want to
Mhm.
travel a ton. And I want to be with someone that loves adventure like me. Jenna knows
Yeah.
Josh and I almost bought an RV and traveled around the country for a year last year.
Actually, we both did, and then we,
Yeah.
remember? And we were like, "Oh, shit, because we were in the same situation. Like I wanted
Yeah.
someone that if I was ever like, hey, I want to up and move, they would come along. And
Yeah,
that
you
is
gotta be
Brandon
ready to
through and
go.
through. And
Yeah.
my ex was not at all like that. Like
Like
I'm
if
pretty
Josh
sure he's
came
still
home
living where
tonight,
we
yeah,
were. Yeah.
if Josh came home tonight and I said, like, we moved 2 days ago, so we're not moving, but if I said, like, I wanna go to Cabo for the weekend, we would go to Cabo for the
Oh
weekend.
yeah.
Like,
I told
he
my
is
husband recently, I was like, you were there. I was like, if you're remote forever,
yeah,
would you be open to moving to Hawaii? And what did he say? He was like, hell yeah. And then
yeah,
we've started
and you
looking at houses. Like,
exactly. This is how we make decisions together.
yep.
And that's the type of adventure I want for my life.
Yes.
There's no question. And if I had married any younger, I wouldn't have been as sure in myself as I
Mhm.
was. And I would have married someone that wasn't a good match for that.
Well, I'm going to say I got married young. I was like newly 24. So, first of all, if
Ooh.
I was my parents and my, at the time, 22, 23-year-old came to me after 3 months, I would be like, oh, hell no, honey. Get back in
I
this.
kind of
Lock
agree
the
with you.
door.
See, I was old, so it was not a big, but like, oh my God,
Yeah.
yes.
And I don't know what I would, and of course I felt so mature. Even when I had my first baby in my 20s, I was like, oh, I'm so mature. Like, oh,
I
hell
know
no, you're not to me.
everything.
Like, so I was actually talking to a friend about this recently. I think it did make our marriage a little harder because we were both so young and had these huge
Yeah.
things to go through. However, I would not change it because when I lost my parents, my dad had started declining before I got married. So Brandon got to see a little glimpse of him, but not the wonderful man I grew up with.
Yeah.
As well as he really got to know my mom. And I really think it was a blessing because my mom helped him through some of his hard years. So I wouldn't change it in terms of that. But I will say, I think it made our struggles a lot harder. As well as we were at the time the only couple that was married. And that was hard because everyone talks about getting married and it sounds like this wonderful, great thing. But when you're the only friend couple that's married, it's very lonely. I mean, you're
Yeah.
the married couple. So whenever my friends did start to get married and I met other married couples, I mean, that was probably like 3 years later. And then I was like, okay, this is cool. But that also put a strain on that first year.
Well, I
Wouldn't change
can't
it,
even
but
imagine because I
oh my
remember
gosh.
when I like being like, oh, so and so's married. I guess they're
Yep.
out of the like,
That
what
was
does that
me. You
mean?
would have
It's
cut me out.
yeah, you're out of here, Jenna. You're out. No,
Right?
but like when I was in the age you were married, I was going, I mean, I didn't drink, but I would still go to bars to meet guys and go to
Yeah.
concerts to meet guys and go places to meet guys. And so
Yeah.
I wanted my girlfriends that wanted to go meet guys too.
Right. Well, and I was like, I still want to go out, but trying to like figure out that whole like married life balance. And it was hard.
Yeah.
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 And I think personally, having children really put a strain on our marriage, good and negative. Like I saw my husband in a whole other light.
Yeah.
I think it's hard for a lot of times one of the
Spouse, yes. Spouse. Partners.
partners, there we go. Because your attention goes from them to this child, and my
Yeah.
child, my firstborn, was so difficult that we looked at each other across the room and said, what the hell did we do? We are also
Hmm.
in our 20s and didn't have any friends with kids. It was hard. Plus you have the lack of sleep and it was really hard. And then we had added parenting strategies. Like we're like, okay, we're gonna be the best kick-ass parents. We're gonna be so laid back. We're gonna do this. We're gonna be these hippie organic parents. Well, all that goes out the window because we struggle with breastfeeding and we didn't
Yeah.
anticipate that challenge. And my husband had a hard time understanding why I didn't just go to formula, why instead I would sit there and cry and feed my baby and not just go straight to formula. And it just, all these ideas I think you have when you get married and before you have kids. And, oh, well, when we face these challenges in our marriage, this is how we're going to approach it. Well, all that kind of goes out the window. So,
You learn really quickly how not easy breezy beautiful you are when shit hits the fan and you have a new baby. Because
yeah.
being like, I'm going to be a fun, flowy, easy,
Oh my
good
gosh.
time parent, and then your boobies don't work. So and so is allergic. Like we couldn't figure out why Zach was so hysterical all the time when he wasn't gaining weight. And it was like, oh,
Mhm.
because he's allergic to eggs and dairy that I'm giving him through my breast milk. And then you switch to soy, and then you're fighting because you have to go find goat's milk at
Mm.
random Whole Foods in the middle of the night. Josh is calling all the Whole Foods in the Twin
Aw.
Cities area looking for goat's milk because that's the only kind of milk that Zach can drink. And being cool and fun and newly married and having kids. And one of Josh's old coworkers described this stage that we're in of parenting as the hair on fire stage,
It
where you're
is.
kind of just running around and your hair's on fire all the time and nobody notices.
Right.
And it's full chaos. It's all the time. And that really takes the sexy out of marriage.
It really does. And then let's just throw in there social media on top of that because you
uh,
see either I feel like you see either perfect marriages and expect that or marriages that are in shambles and then the person just quickly goes to divorce and then it's like, okay, well I can do that too. And we get all these expectations and it's hard. Like I have to get off of social media when shit kind of hits the fan with us because personally I don't post when shit is hard in our marriage on social media
yeah.
because
Nobody does, I don't
yeah.
think.
Well, and that's not my priority. Like today, when we had a hard day, my priority was I need to get out of this house. I need to go
Yeah.
meet up with a friend and kind of get those endorphins going. And we need some time to kind of filter what just happened. It's not, oh, I'm going to post this right now. When things are good, I'm like, oh, I'm going to share that. So that's not even like my first instinct. So we don't really see that. And let's
And
be
I think
honest,
that's
like you
good
don't
that
want to
you
be
point.
seen as that. Like,
No, and I think that's good that you point that out. And what you're doing is right. And that's one lesson I have learned in marriage. And I've told you this before. I try not to speak poorly of my husband to
right.
people,
Yeah.
but that can be a double edged sword because you and I both were having hard times in our marriage. And you and I talk about everything. And we weren't telling each other this last like
Yeah.
48 hours until I sent you a meme of like how we were going to murder our husbands or something. And you're like, me too.
Yep.
And so I think what you said is really important for people to take note of is you knew you needed. So you're not like following him around telling him what he did wrong and what he needs to fix. You said your piece, you left and did what you needed, which was, and you used the word filter. You went and filtered your feelings. I pretty much can guess that you did not go over to your friend's house and talk shit about Brandon.
We didn't even
You
talk
went
about
over.
him.
Exactly. And so this is something that women get wrong, I think. And I've seen it with my own eyes. I've been in relationships where I've done this. Don't have a fight with your spouse and then go out and fester over the fight with your spouse. Have a fight with your spouse, leave the house, go take care of yourself.
Yes.
And filter through the feelings and then come back with a clear head.
Right.
And I get into because Josh thinks that fights aren't over until we've come to a resolution.
Yes.
Like I don't fucking play like that.
No.
I need to cut it, say, let's pick this up later. What I used to do pre-COVID, which I am looking forward to doing again soon. Whenever we had a big fight, I'd be like, I'm leaving and I'm going to get a pedicure. And I would go get a pedicure, center myself, think, realize nothing is as bad as it feels when you're in that like fight or flight mode, not talk bad about him or go with a girlfriend and not talk about my husband, let it kind of just like wash over me and then come back and reevaluate the situation and see if it's as big as it really is.
I agree completely. And I think a lot of times, like you bring up a good point. When we sit there and we bash our husbands to our friends, first of all, that makes your friend feel awkward when they're around him next. Second of all, there's one of two things going on usually in your marriage. Either your husband is a complete dickbag and you need to either address that or get out, or you're completely missing the point that you're a big part of this problem. Over the years, I have come to realize it's our problem. It's not his problem. It is a problem in our marriage. It's not just him. And I have to own up to that. And I have to sit there and work through that as well as be upfront with him. Like I'm struggling because of XYZ instead of just pointing the finger over and over to him because that's not going to get us anywhere at all. And we already struggle with communication, both of us. And it just makes everything just so much harder when you bring in an outside source. And then what if your friend is like, oh, honey, like it's time to cut the cord and you don't? Do you put a strain out on that friendship?
Yeah.
You know, and if you're the one saying that and your friend doesn't take your advice, are you going to be butthurt? Come on.
And I try really hard not to give people marriage advice. I'll give you kid advice all day if you ask. But if someone, I will brag about Josh and be like, I've said it before, I'll say it again, get yourself a Josh. Like, because he has
we both
so many.
say that about our husbands, even though
he has so many great attributes. But then he just does some real dumb shit. But I do dumb shit too. And he isn't going around back. I know for a fact, like one of his coworkers told me once, and this is like a guy who cannot lie. And he said, Josh is the only guy that I know that never talks bad about his wife or his kids and always can't wait to come home. And I was like, oh,
yeah,
that is a good man. But I'm a dickhead too sometimes. He
Yeah.
does stuff that's dumb. I do stuff that's dumb. And I'm just a lot more vocal about it.
And like honestly, we've also had to learn how each other I use the word fight, but I guess it's strongly disagree. Because
Eh.
I am one, I'm gonna say my piece and then I need a minute to cool off and filter what just happened, or I'm gonna lose my shit and say something or do something I regret.
Yes.
Brandon, like Josh, wants it resolved right this second. So, for instance, today, and I already had these plans to meet up with a friend, it just happened to work out perfectly. So I kissed the babies and I'm like, you guys, I'm having a hard time. Mommy needs to go filter through her thoughts. And I get in the car and Brandon calls me. And I was like, no, I cannot
No.
talk to you right now. I am listening to podcasts. I am thinking through my feelings. I need time. And he's like, and I'm like, no. And I just had to
But
put the line down. And I was like, I am hanging up now. I need this time. And luckily he respected it, but he does struggle with that, even though it's every
did it
time.
take him a while? Because like Josh now will respect it. But in our
Mhm.
earlier years, I'd hang up on him and he would call and call and call and call and
Oh,
call
if
and
I
text
hung
and
up on
text
him,
and
he would
text.
have called and called. But I was
Oh,
like,
see,
I'm
sometimes
hanging up now. Like,
no, yeah, like I'll say like I have to go. You're not respecting me saying I have to go, so I'm gonna hang up now. And he's still talking. But in our earlier years, he would have called and texted and been like, "You need to pick up," blah, blah, blah. And now he knows, yeah, she'll come
yeah.
around.
Well, in our earlier years, sometimes I would just be like, I need to get out, and I would just leave. And I think that drove him crazy because he would be like, where is she going? Da, da, da. And like
Yeah.
he knew where I was going this time. And I think it was a little different. I was going to like a safe place, and he knew about when I would be back.
Oh no, there were times when Josh and I were probably dating, maybe engaged, and I straight up got out of the car and I would like get away. I would get out of the car.
Mhm.
And this wasn't drunken behavior. This was one time
Right.
on the way to church. He
Yeah.
made me so mad on the way to church. I straight up got out of the car, left, walked to a payphone, called, I think, a taxi because there weren't Ubers yet. I
I did
would
that with
just,
one of my exes, but I was the complete dick and I called my dad to pick you up.
ooh,
You
that's a
don't
good
come back
one.
from that one, honey. Not
No, you
me.
don't. You're
But
done.
your ex. Yeah.
You're done.
Okay, so the other area of our marriage personally that we struggle in is communication since day one, either over communication or under. And you might think over communication, like what? It's always on my part because I just sit there and I da 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 da, and I expect the same from him, and I don't get that back. And then I'm like, well, what's wrong? What are you hiding? This was more early on in our marriage. When drinking was an issue, I
Yeah.
got insecure about, okay, if you're hiding this, then what else are you hiding kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like then our communication got decent. We did do couples therapy year one, and it was good ish. I feel like my husband did try and put on a little show, which is very, very common. Like, things
Yeah.
are great, things are okay. Versus
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, looking at him like,
Yeah.
what house are
There-
you living in, honey? So, and then we did recently, right before COVID. So I guess it was over a year ago, but our therapist was not the right match. And then COVID hit. But now that we're in coming up on 10 of marriage, I feel like our communication honestly is worse because we're so comfortable that we're not communicating as much. And I always say to my husband, I'm not a fucking mind reader. And oh my gosh, the other day we were in the laundry room and I did not know the kids were out in the kitchen. And I lost my shit on Brandon. And he said something and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a fucking mind reader. Did you know that I can read minds now? Like being super
no.
sarcastic. And so then I walk out and my kids are like, why are you so excited? And I was like, oh, I was just talking with daddy. And they were like, okay, let's say, mom, can you read our mind? And so then I had to like play this game with them. And I was like, oh shit.
Was
So,
Brandon like, are you proud of yourself now? That's what Josh and I always do.
hopefully.
Are you happy with yourself now?
Right. How do you feel now, honey? So,
Cute.
yeah, we're in a communication lull. Plus, we're around each other all the time. And so before he would call me on his way home from work, and we would always use that time on the phone to catch up and chat. And now it's like, oh, you're off work. Can you help with the kids so I can go run? Or can you? So the communication is just really not there right now. And there's not much time for date nights. And anytime the kids go to grandma's house, we're just exhausted. And we're like, we want to zone out to a movie or I fall asleep at 9 o'clock and
Oh, it's the
all that just
best.
goes out the window. Like,
It really does. And also, I mean, we've never been star communicators. I am quiet and like to keep everything in. And
mhm.
Josh likes to discuss everything until we come to a resolution. And he says to me all the time, like, how's your podcast? And I'm like, good. He'll ask me, like, how's your workout? Good. He's like, you're literally like talking to a teenager because you
Mhm.
just say, like, good,
See, that's how Brandon
good.
communicates, and I don't get it. The only time he
Yeah.
wants to really communicate is when I lose my mind and I get to that
Oh, yeah.
breaking point, and I'm like, I need it before then.
Before
Yeah.
I embarrass myself in front of the neighbor or children.
Oh,
But
I'm
I
sure our neighbors have heard it.
I don't know where anybody's supposed to learn the etiquette of communicating correctly. I mean, I'm
Mm-mm.
assuming like I don't think premarital counseling, like, you're supposed to go through premarital counseling
Yeah.
at your church or whatever. But Josh and I can just have completely different communication styles. I think I'm the Brandon and Josh
Mhm.
is the Jenna.
And I think
And
that's fine. Like, if not, you guys are just
yeah,
sitting there talking all the time or not talking
ugh,
at all. And I think you
yeah,
need that balance. It makes it harder,
it makes
but
it
it keeps
hard.
it interesting.
But also the expectations during COVID have changed a lot. Like
Oh
you
my
said,
gosh.
Brandon used to call you on his way home, you'd catch up on the day, and then you would do dinner. And now there's an expectation that if they're in the house, they're going to help a little bit.
Mhm.
And Josh will be like, well, no, I'm still working. Like, you can't just run off in the middle of the day all the time because I have work calls. And
Yeah.
it's like we don't have the ground. Like, he's like, can I just share my Outlook schedule with you? And I'm like, no, I don't want to see what your
Oh, Brandon
meeting.
said that too. And I was like, I'm not a
No.
child. Get your schedule away from me.
No, I don't wanna look at your schedule of phone calls. I can't,
Right?
no. But it's hard because you do have to remember that they are working, but also, like, your body's in the house, so can you please,
Yeah.
like, wipe one kid's butt while I wipe the other kids?
Mhm.
Like,
Exactly. And we've also struggled the opposite. I'm like, I am going to lose my shit with you here or without you here. So when I start screaming, just press mute
don't
on your
come out.
computer. You don't need to
Yeah,
come out and try and solve it because it's going to cause a whole other layer.
yeah.
And I don't need that. Like, this is how our normal everyday life is. And he still does struggle with that, as well as he's here for all the kids' moments. And so before it was like, oh, look at this video that Peyton did and all this
Yeah.
stuff. And I felt like there was a little mystery to our relationship. Like, I was alone all day. You have no idea what I did all day. I know you're at work, but I'm a stay at home mom. You have no
Yeah,
idea.
yeah.
And now it's like he knows every move I make.
Like, what
He's
part
like,
of he knows
oh,
what
so
rope.
you went to the restroom 2 times today. You're not hydrated enough. Like, come on. No, he doesn't do that. I'm just kidding.
No, but it's very true. And Zach and I had an argument this morning and it was completely resolved. And I had handled it like with all of my proper like training of,
Mhm.
getting on his level and discussing it with him. We were talking about breaking promises and Josh got his second COVID shot yesterday. So he wasn't feeling good. So he had promised Zach he would play his Ninja Turtle game with him this morning before he left for work. And Josh was like, well, I am not feeling good. So, and Zach was like, you broke your promise. And so I went over it with Zach. I was like, remember when mommy got her second shot? She had made a promise with you. I think we were going to
Mhm.
go to your house and I couldn't because I
Yeah.
was sick. And I was like, so sometimes when someone's sick, they have to break a promise and that doesn't count as breaking promises. And
Right.
I'm really sorry that you're disappointed, buddy, but this is a part of life and that's not a broken promise. It's something that came up unexpectedly. And he was like, okay. And it was over. And then here comes Josh over the
Oh,
stairs and like interjects like another sentence that sends
yes.
Zach back into spiral. And I was like, I don't know where you
Thanks.
came from. I
Right?
don't know what you're doing here,
Yeah.
but no, thank you. We had this complete, and I like looked at him and was
That's
like,
the worst. Yeah.
but everybody has to learn a whole new mode of communication with everybody home now.
Yeah. And then when if he goes back to work, like, that's going to be a whole other thing again. Like,
You're gonna have
he'll
to learn
probably
all
forget to
again.
call me and, he'll forget what he used to do. And
Oh, I
I don't,
love, and like you said, I loved when Josh traveled all the time because like I got to miss him, and then when he came home, I was like,
yes.
"Hey, baby,"
Right?
and
And
now
then
it's like,
Brandon used to like send me the sweetest messages when he was at work.
yeah.
And granted, I was usually in the car or something, so I wouldn't always respond. But now I'm like, what the fuck? Can you at least leave me like a love note or a love letter? Like,
Well, now you
I
got
have
your
this
fucking
one.
wish, homie.
I have this one on my desk, and if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see it. It was from one of our podcasts that he listened to, and it's a poop and then a person's head. So poop head, great podcast. So that's my love notes now. And before they used to be like, "You're the most beautiful. You're the best wife. You're the best mom to our kids. I love you so much. I'm thinking about you."
Oh,
And now I could just get poop head. But I mean, I'm
Poop
not gonna
head.
lie, I kinda like the poop head a little more, so.
I know, I kind of feel like that sometimes. It's like I remember there was a commercial on when I was a kid that was like, when her lacy underwear get replaced with the, like, holy rubber ducky underwear, that's when you
Yes.
know it's like, I love the holy ducky underwear part of it.
Mm.
So, I totally get that, and Josh still leaves us notes when he travels. "Here's your coffee, I hope you have a good day," like he did on
Aw.
St. Patrick's Day, and that was, like, a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
And he
Aw.
left the kids a bunch of money and was like, "Here's some money for mom too. Like,
Right?
you guys go shopping and get some new toys." And like,
Oh, that's cute. That's really
so
cute.
they still are so sweet and wonderful. But 10 years in, or 7 years in, or however far in, there's definitely been ups and downs, and there's definitely speed bumps along the way. And when
Yeah.
you lose a parent, or you lose a job, or you move as much as
Or you
Josh
have a
and I
baby. Like,
have a
babies
baby,
don't
get
fix it. They
babies
just
don't fix it. And that's another part, is people think like, "Oh, I'm gonna have a baby and it'll make things better." Or like, I asked my fairy godmother and my godmother for some of their marriage advice, and one of them was, "This shit that bugs you before you're married is gonna bug you
Mm.
100% more when you are married, before marriage and after marriage." And
Yeah.
so don't think you're gonna get married to fix a problem. Don't think you're gonna have a baby
Right.
to fix the problem. That should be
Yeah.
elementary, but also it can't be repeated enough.
I like that. And let's like going off that, let's talk about like some of the advice we received because my dad said something similar. I can't remember it verbatim. I'm trying to remember when you were saying that. But it was basically I had broken up with a boyfriend of the long term and I was struggling because I was having a little panic attack thinking, will someone ever love me? Was this my one chance kind of thing?
Yeah, I've had a lot of those.
And I think everyone does. And even if you're in a bad part of your marriage, you're like, was this the right choice? And he told me something. He was like, why did y'all break up? And I told him, and it was basically, I think I want this out of a marriage and a partner, and I want this and this. And he doesn't meet those criteria. And my dad basically told me, those are not things you can change about a person. And if you are sitting there in a relationship trying to change a person, then it's not meant to be. There's not going to be someone you meet and you love or even like every single aspect and tick and trait that they have. But if you can accept them and be okay with it, then that's your person. And he was like,
Yeah.
there's things about your mom I do not agree with, I do not love. Like, she does some annoying shit, but I accept it and I can live
Yeah.
with it. However, if she had a trait that I could not get past and I had resentment towards that, like, she would not be my person. And I was like, that was a good point. Like, I could not instill the want for travel and adventure and for a better life, and for motivation was a big one in my last marriage. And you cannot instill that in somebody. That has to come
In
from
your last
within them.
relationship.
Yeah.
Not in your last marriage.
Did I say marriage? I've not been married. In my last relationship.
Josh was married before, so we're not judging people that were married before.
But Brandon's
Jenna
gonna listen
just
to
has,
it and be like, what?
I'll edit it out. Wink, wink.
And
Sorry,
so
Brandon.
yeah, like I couldn't look past that. And there's things about Brandon that I'm like, oh my gosh, like, but I can accept it because he has
Yeah.
all the other qualities that I need. And I know there's stuff about me, like he's like, seriously.
But it's so true. Does Josh chew loud and breathe loud? Fuck yeah. Way too loud.
But breathing.
But when my dad dies, is Josh going to drive me across the country in the middle of the night and pay for his funeral? Also, yes.
Exactly. No questions asked. Like, no motivation needed.
None.
Like, at all.
Not a second thought. When do you want to leave? What can I pack?
Right.
And here's my credit card. Like,
exactly.
that is how you or when your kid is sick, is your husband more worried than you are? And like, those are parts of people's DNA that you can't change.
Right.
And everybody just hates how long I really brush my teeth for like 7 minutes every time I brush my teeth, and he thinks that's annoying. Everybody has traits that are annoying, but there are intrinsic qualities of human beings: the love of travel, the love of moving, the love of adventure, the fly by the seat of your pants, that you can't change about a person.
And I feel
Hating
like if you're in a relationship, right, you can tell if someone is kind of faking it to make you happy. And look at that red flag.
Well, and us women, like, I've faked who I am for relationships before. And I think women fake who they are for relationships a lot. And that shit is so over. And Josh always has said, Josh is I want to do an episode sometimes where Josh just tells it like it is. Because Josh always says, if a guy isn't beating down every obstacle in the way to be with you, he is
Yes.
not worth your time. Josh is like, I
Amen.
would have done anything to be
Brandon
with
too.
you.
Mhm.
And any guy that is not calling you, texting you, staying in touch with you, sending you postcards, going to the store to buy you, like anybody that's not doing those things is not your person.
Yeah.
Like,
Ignore that bullshit of like, you need to wait X amount. Do whatever you want to do and you will find the
no,
person for you. Brandon texted me that night after I got home. At first, my first instinct was like, oh, he's needy.
too
And then I was like,
soon.
wait. I like this shit. Like
Yeah.
I need to just like ignore the preconceived notion that this is not acceptable. And it was perfect. And now I got that man. So
Well, and Josh and I went on our first date, and then like a week later, he was like, I have to work in Vegas this weekend. Do you want to come?" And I was like, "Yeah." And
yeah.
everybody's like, "That seems a little bit soon." And I was like, "But that's the kind of adventure
Yep.
I want. So I'll see you in Vegas." And on the flight home from Vegas, he told me he loved me. And I was like,
Aw.
he was like, "You don't have to say it back if you don't want." And I was like, "No, I love
Aw.
you too." And like, that
Aw.
was it. And that
Done.
is how I wanted my life to be. And I didn't want it to be
Mhm.
like, let's wait 3 days, then you wait 3 days. Then like, that's not,
Mhm.
I don't do
Yeah.
that.
Another piece of advice I received, it was from our first counseling session. He sat us down and he was like, "What is love?" And I was like, "Oh man, like let
That's
me Google that real
hard.
quick."
Yeah.
And so I tried to give a definition about feelings and emotions and everything. And Brandon did as well. And he was like, okay, I think this is something we need to talk about. And he was like, you guys need to view love as a choice. You're not going to wake up every day and it's rainbows and butterflies. You
Mhm.
need to wake up on those hard days, those hard years, and say, this is hard shit. He probably didn't say shit. He was a Christian counselor. This is
It'd be
some
cooler if he
hard
did.
poo poo. um, but I, I am going to choose to love this person today. No matter what else I do, I
Yeah.
choose to love them. And that was the best advice because, again, you think it should be every single day. Oh my gosh, I love you, baby. I love you. Well,
Yay.
no, it's not.
Roll over here with your morning breath and let's
Oh
just be
my
in
gosh.
love. And after you've been pulling the covers off
No.
me all night, we've had a kid kicking us in the face. Like,
Right?
no, you do.
Yeah,
And I'm glad you said that because I need to remember that sometimes too, because I
it's hard.
really do just expect to wake up in love every day. And
Right.
it's not realistic.
It's not at all. It's not at all. And I also have gotten better. I'm still not great at it of telling Brandon when I'm having a hard time instead of just bitching out. And
Yes.
the other day, I was feeling anxious. We had just released one of our episodes, and that always makes me a little anxious because it's out there. I can't
It's
remember everything I
private.
said.
And
Yeah,
we've always said we record these episodes as if no one will ever hear them. And
yeah,
and I've had the same thing. I've messaged you and been like, it released today. I can't listen
right,
to it. Can someone listen to it until I can't
yeah.
remember it?
And we were struggling with homeschool, and the house was a mess. It was just one of those days. And I'm sure it was somewhere in my cycle phase where hormones were raging. And I just looked at him and I was like, I am in the worst mood. I need the tightest hug you can give me. And then I need you to leave me alone. And he gave me a tight hug. And then he was like, I got the kids, go work out. And this is like between his calls.
Oh,
And that took me a long time to just be like, you know what? Today is one of those days where I'm not
yeah.
feeling it. So I'm not going to try and fake it. And that has really helped our marriage. Brandon's not there yet. We still struggle on that communication, but I think that's completely different for a guy as well as he's not as in tune to his emotions.
Yeah. I'm not either.
So
I'm learning now. I'm working.
yeah, it's hard.
This is one that has helped me a lot. And I think it goes both ways. So you are only as happy if you're a stay at home mom,
Hmm.
you're as only happy at your job as your husband is at his job. And to me has been really
Yeah.
important because Josh has gone through a lot of jobs. And as he
Hmm.
becomes unhappy, we don't stick with it. And yes,
Hmm.
we are really lucky that he is so employable.
Hmm.
But I think it goes both ways. If you're in a dual income house, also,
Hmm.
your partner or any human being is only as happy as they are in their job.
I agree.
And not everybody gets to do their dream job. My husband and I don't think we'll ever have a dream job.
Hmm.
But every job choice we make is to get him closer to happiness because staying home with my kids is my ultimate happiness. But if I was chasing a career, my husband would only be as happy at home as it just works for
Yeah.
everyone. So
It does. I like that.
consider if your husband is having a hard time at work and you stay home, they're not as happy as you
Right.
are because your situation is kind of stable. And if you're dual income, it goes both ways. Whoever
Mhm.
stays home is only going to be as happy as your partner is in their
That is
career.
so true. I pick up on his energy like
Like
nobody's business.
nobody's business. And when Josh isn't happy in his job, we start planning for the next one and I will move and go wherever I need to go so
Yep.
he can be as happy as I am.
And that's something we've
And it's a
always said. Yeah.
sacrifice.
Yeah.
Let's
It
not
is.
pretend me leaving Richmond and leaving you and leaving
Uh,
our commune was not a sacrifice,
mhm.
but my husband being as happy as I am or as close to it is important to me.
Mhm.
And so
Yep.
that bit of advice has gotten me through 10 moves at this
Yeah.
point, you
Well,
know?
and that was like I know we said we just kind of like decided we didn't want to be in Texas anymore, but part of that was also my husband wasn't as happy in his job. It was a very small company. He didn't see a lot of opportunity for
Yeah.
growth and he was kind of getting bored. There was
Yeah.
nothing wrong with the job. There
Hmm.
was one position above him. That person was not retiring or leaving anytime soon. So he was just kind of stagnant. And so that
Yeah.
also played like a huge role in it. And we moved to Richmond and he's on his second job since we've moved here and he loves it and it makes
Yeah.
the world of difference. And it's not saying he has a perfect happy everyday day. Like the other day his 3 hours worth of work didn't save. And so it's true it reflected into our home life which reflected into my job as a stay-at-home mom. And I like that that's really good advice.
Well,
I would
and
make
it
some
goes
of
both ways. Like, and being
that.
stagnant in a job is hard for people. I have a female best friend that is very career driven, and she keeps going up and up and up and up and up in her company. And she has 2.5, two kids and one on the way. She is thrilled with her job because she can keep moving forward. And so if your spouse shows frustration with a stagnant job, support
Mhm.
them. I have
Yes.
written every one of my husband's resumes. As soon as he starts to get unhappy, I say, email me your resume. I'm going to get to work on it. As soon as he says, I'm looking at a job here, here, and here, I say, I prefer, and I rank the cities.
Yep.
Like, we are a team in this.
Yes.
And I think people need to realize that if you're going to,
Mhm.
it has to work both ways and you have to be super supportive of it,
I
even if you
agree.
don't want to.
And even if you're helping them, you don't have to do everything together. That
No.
was like a big thing for us. I felt like when my husband was struggling to find a job. So after he graduated, well, I guess he didn't graduate, he dropped out. It was like graduate school. We're like, let's get a job. I felt like it was my responsibility to help him. And it was to some extent. But at the same time, like this is our first or second year of marriage. And I'm like, we have to do this all together, everything together. And
Hmm.
I was like, and that was like a hard learning curve for us, even during COVID. Like, you don't have to do everything together. Two, you don't have to share the same interests. Like at night, sometimes we'll watch TV together, but sometimes I don't love a lot of TV.
Yeah.
I get bored and then I get like ping pong brain and I start thinking about other things. Like I would rather read or work on podcast
Yeah.
stuff. And so sometimes I'm like, go in the other room. And at first he's like following me around like a little puppy dog. I'm trying to like shake him off. And so finally I'm like, well, then I'm just going to watch The Bachelor. And that sure enough gets him out of the room.
Oh,
Uh,
Josh loves that shit. If I watch
does he?
Josh loves oh my God, the trashier the TV, the better. Also,
Yes.
I want to know if you think Brandon's gonna be more offended by you claiming to have a first husband or calling him a puppy dog that followed you around.
First husband for sure. He's more the jealous type. But at the same
Oh,
time, we don't do everything together, but we respect each other's needs, wants, passions. He loves technology, and I could give two shits about it.
yeah.
He set me up with all of this stuff. Like, I didn't have an iPad. I have a phone
Brandon is
that
the producer of Jenna's entire end of Done
he
Playing by
really
the
is.
Rules.
He really is. But at the same time, I know he wants to share that with me. And so, like, when he gets a new
Yeah.
gadget, I'll act interested because it brings him joy. Like, I'm not faking it. I can just see it brings him joy. And I'm like, oh, show me that. Show me more. That's really helped our relationship, not thinking that I have to be a part of his like technology thing.
Yeah.
Like, no, show me your after product. And I really enjoy working out. And he's like iffy.
Yeah.
And so I tried to make him work out with me. And that was just like torture because then he's in a grumpy mood. And then I'm like, I don't want this in my space. Like, get your
No.
negativity out of here.
Yeah.
But he'll support me and buy me all the little gadgets for it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like support, but not everything.
Oh my
like,
God, Josh is the same way.
together.
You know, my husband is not working out, but when the
What? He didn't
pandemic
run that
hit,
marathon?
no, I tried to convince him to go for a run the other night. He wasn't having it. But when the pandemic hit, he was driving all over the state to find me
I
weights.
remember
Do you
that.
remember that? He was
You went
going
to like
2
Virginia
hours.
Beach while you were asleep.
Yeah. Well, I napped one day to buy me weights. And so
Yeah.
like he's super supportive, but we don't share all the same interests. I am really into like learning new things and researching
Yeah.
child psychology. And like I also bypass Jenna sometimes because I know her husband's into like tech and stuff. And I'll send Jenna an article and be like, what does Brandon think about Bitcoin and NFTs?
Oh, and he loves it. He loves to like talk to
I
somebody
know
about it.
he likes stuff like that, and I like stuff like that. But Josh doesn't. I mean, Josh does like a lot of stock market, but he's not into like the tech side of things.
Right.
And so I'm like, I know Brandon will like it, so I
Right?
just send it to Jenna to tell Brandon. But
oh, when Janelle's over, he'll like come out and be like, "Have you seen the latest article?" Like,
yeah, and we like go over
it's really
stats
funny.
on things.
Yep. And I'm like, what?
But yeah, and we're just like, okay. Anyways, another really important thing that one of my fairy godmother/godmothers told me, which I hadn't thought about, is she said she writes her husband a honey-do list to avoid nagging. And
we do
I
that.
am working. Okay, so I don't, and I love writing lists, as you know, like everywhere is a list, but I don't write Josh a list and I follow him around and nag at him. She sent me that and I was like, shit, I should do that. And so I'm going to start writing a list of things I need him to do instead of I set things out. Like I set Mikey's toothbrush out on the counter, assuming he'll know it needs the batteries replaced. I had to do the batteries.
No. He probably never saw that toothbrush there.
He didn't. It's just ended up back in Mikey's bathroom with no new batteries in it. And I was like, why did you think I brought it downstairs?
Right.
To just look at it in the basement? And so I was like, why did I don't ever write for him what I want him to do? And then I'm shocked he doesesn't get it.
Our only nagging does come in when he doesn't do his list or he'll do part of it and then check it off. And I'm like, that doesn't count.
That would make me furious.
My husband, I think, also struggles with some ADD. And so it's very common. It's kind of like a joke, or it was a joke between my mom and I. One Thanksgiving, I told my husband, I asked him to bring in 2 extra chairs for guests and set the napkins at their place settings and fill the waters. I called my mom over because there is a chair in the hallway. There's a chair on the side of the room. Half the glasses are filled up and the napkins are off like in a completely other room. And I'm just
this is me. Brandon is me.
Right? And so he thought,
no one asked me to do anything.
And now he's in the kitchen like helping cook. And I'm like, did you do all that? And he's like,
no, something more exciting came up, Jenna.
Yeah. But in his mind, he's like, check. And so that is something we struggle with. As well as
the general vicinity.
Yes. I've had to kind of give I need this done by, and it's usually like a week. Like if it's something important, like say we're going to the dentist and I need them to print forms. I need this done by Tuesday because if not, he's like, this has no date. So it's just going to sit here. Right. And so that's been our modification to the list is there's certain things I'll write like Tuesday or now, or this should have been done last week.
Remember last week? I still need it.
Off of that, I think my biggest piece of advice, and we struggle, but we have gotten better, is learn your spouse's love language and act on that. Not yours. Brandon's is gift giving, if that's the right term for it.
Yeah.
And mine is acts of service. So don't come in here bringing me a fucking Gucci bag and expect me to be just excited about it. Like if we just had this huge
about it.
I guess my other one is also, quality time, which kind of goes into like the communication, but acts of service in terms of like, I don't want him to wait on me, but almost anticipate what I need. So if he sees I'm struggling, he comes out and helps. He doesn't interfere. If he sees I have a to-do list on the counter, he goes over and he's like, okay, I can knock out taking out the trash. And he just does it for me. It's not, what do you want me to do? What do you need me to do? That kind of stuff. So yeah, don't expect me to be all excited if we got into this huge fight and there was like a Gucci purse. So I'm assuming he kind of worked on it and that's why he wrote me a note, because usually he would have gone out and bought me something, honestly. He would have run up to the little antique store on the corner and picked up something. However, and I'm going to put a however on there. If I have mentioned something or he notices something that I have said I want, and then he gives that to me as a gift for Christmas, like this Christmas, He did so good. There was so many things he got me that I don't even remember mentioning throughout the year. So that means he went in and he took a little mental note, or like actually probably a physical note because he can't remember anything. And he got him for me for Christmas. And that meant the world to me. Not the gift, but the action
Well, because
behind
what
it.
you're describing is him anticipating
Mm-hmm.
basically a future need. You mentioned
Right.
something you wanted, and without him interjecting himself into your life, he just provided
Yeah,
something for you. So that
exactly.
directly falls into your love
Yeah.
language.
And the year before, he got me, I think, like a piece of jewelry, and it was like really expensive. And I'm just like, okay. I'm sure he spent half the amount of money this last year, but it was everything that I wanted. It was all like
Yeah.
relaxation stuff.
I do the
So,
same, and Josh's love language is gift giving, and mine is words of affirmation. And
ooh,
so Josh provides 0 words of affirmation. That is basically our biggest fight.
yeah.
And I didn't really realize this until we were kind of researching for this episode. And I had said, I, unbeknownst to myself, always worked in jobs where I was told explicitly, you're doing a good job or you're doing a
Mm-hmm.
bad job. Being a
Yeah.
waitress, you're doing a good job and making a shit ton of money, or you're doing a shit job and you're getting shit tables and you're making no money.
Right.
I've always worked in sales because sales is so easily tracked if you're doing a good or a bad job. So then you go
Yeah.
from that to stay at home mom where no one tells you
Oh
how
my
you're
gosh.
doing ever.
Honestly, actually, it's the opposite. You're told, you're not doing that right.
You're
That's not
the
how dad
worst.
does
You're not nice all day long. You're
it.
being a mean mom. And I'm like,
Why does
I
your breath
know.
smell like that? Why does your hair look like that?
Oh yeah, they told me I had bad hair today, and I was like, I know, I'm getting it
Oh my
fixed. Give me a
gosh.
break. But Josh is always gift giving, and so, and I mean, I like getting gifts, but it's the same thing. Like he
Mm-hmm.
has bought me a Gucci bag, and I love it. But
Right.
we went and bought it together, and we bought
Mm-hmm.
it on a trip in New York City, and he bought it while we were together, and said like, you're such a good mom, you deserve a special treat, and I want to
Aw.
take you to New York for the weekend. So like
So it's like a
that checked my
symbol of that affirmation.
it's a
Oh,
symbol
that's
of words of
cool.
affirmation. But also, one year for Christmas, he bought me a fancy vacuum cleaner, and I cried because I was so happy. And my mom was like, "Oh, a vacuum cleaner? That's like the gift a husband's never supposed to give you." And I was like, "Except for I'd been saying
Mm-hmm.
how hard it was to keep up with 2 kids. So
Yeah.
imagine the crumbs in my house." And he
Oh my
gave me
gosh.
something that I had said that I was having trouble with and fixed my problem.
Right.
And I cried. I
Aw.
loved it so much.
I love that story. That's so cute.
It
And
was my favorite.
it's hard for me because, Brandon's, like I said, is gift giving. And to me, I'm like, do I really need to spend money on this? And it's
Yeah,
hard
it is hard.
because that's not my love language, but I
It's
always
not
have
mine
to remember,
either.
like, it doesn't mean crap to him if I write him a note. It doesn't mean
Yeah.
anything to him if I do all these other things, but get him a thoughtful gift and man is over the moon. So
Oh
I
my
guess
God,
I
so
need to
over the
go
moon.
get one soon.
I got Josh a couple of pairs of Lululemon pants like a month ago, and he wears them all the time and
Aw.
like loves them. And I haven't
Yeah.
bought him anything for a really long time. And he really appreciates, and I bought new sheets
Mhm.
for the bed, and he always says like how crappy our sheets are. And so I bought new sheets, and he was like, "These are so nice."
Isn't
Like
that cute? Yeah.
it makes him so happy, even if it's just like something
Yeah.
silly. And so
Oh, I bought
I
Brandon some new shirts from Target and I just told him, I was like, some of yours were looking a little dingy and I know these aren't like anything fancy. And he just like was so over the moon and he was like, thank you so much for thinking of me. Cause usually when I do a Target order, it's like what we need for the house and then some clothes for the kids. And like these $15 shirts meant a lot to
I
him. It was just really
know. And
cute.
so, and I had never even heard of love languages until I met Josh, and he had read it and he gave me the book, and I was like, this is like the weirdest bullshit I've ever seen. And then I like read it and realized what we both
It's
were.
so
Because I was like, this
good.
is like horoscopes. I'm not reading this. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh no, we both do have these, and they are so profound in our marriage that I should go back and reread it and get some more tips on. So that's our
Mhm.
other call to action. I'm
Yeah.
going to start writing a honey-do list, and I'm going to go back and read our love languages book and find some tips
Here's a
for things I can
shortcut
do.
too. If you're not sure, and we'll talk about this on another episode, but I also have used it for my kids because theirs is completely different
Yeah, I
than what
want
you
to
would
do that for
expect.
my kids too. Is there a special book
Go
to find out what your kids is, or what?
the website. It's been updated. I don't know. It could have been in the last 10 years, but I went on there just to make sure I was using like the right terms. And I'm going to link the website. And basically it has like, you pick, I can't remember all the categories, but it was like spouse, I think yourself, kids, and then one more. You can take a little quiz and figure it out about whoever you want.
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
We should come back and do another episode about kids. I also think it would be beneficial. I kind of want to do an episode geared towards late teen, early 20s, because I see so many young girls making such bad choices.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean,
that was me.
I was so close. I was so close to marrying the wrong guy multiple times. And I was in multiple 3 to 5 year relationships that weren't serving me because I thought that was my one chance. And then when I finally broke up with that last boyfriend who was wonderful and I'm still like think the world of, but it just wasn't the correct decision for me. And then when you find the one that makes it all make sense, that's sometimes when you're 28 or however old I was, but it's such a different click in your brain that I would love to do an episode for late teen, early 20s girls to say like, basically he's not that into you or he is that into you and what you really want in a life partner, because you don't know what you want in a life partner until you have kids and a kid gets sick or you have a parent that passes away and that person steps the fuck up. And that is the person you keep.
Exactly. And if shit is hard and you're not married, chances are it's only going to get harder.
I mean, I don't know
unless they have a miraculous come to Jesus moment. I don't
even
know.
then it's going to be temporary because you can't change someone's DNA. You got a good one or you don't got a good one. And Josh has his flaws and his wild tendencies, but he is such a good one at heart. Yeah. And Brandon, I think, is the same. Exactly. Brandon's a ride or die. Josh is a ride or die.
I could not be married to anyone else.
Nor, I always say this, I could not be married to anyone else and no one else would put up with my shit.
And no one else would put up with their shit either. Like, I tell them that all the time.
We're all stuck together.
Ha ha ha. And, we preach mental health and that goes along with this too. Like, marriage counseling is okay. Your grandma might say, you don't need that. Your in-laws, your parents might say, you don't need that. Do it. I know many couples that do it and don't tell anyone.
You don't
if
have
that's
to.
Your little secret.
We'll tell, but you don't have to tell.
Right?
Yeah.
Chances are, if you find a good therapist, you can bring your kids. I have brought mine, put headphones on them, and hooked up an iPad because we couldn't get a sitter or a sitter canceled, or we were somewhat embarrassed to tell people we were going through that. But I will tell you, when I've told people we were in counseling, they're like, can you send me the information? I really want to convince my husband. Get your husband into therapy, have them try a few sessions. I swear, it might not work right away, but it opens up so many doors. It's hard. Therapy is not an easy thing. It is hard shit, but it's good shit.
Well, and we've also preached psychologytoday.com. You can look up, you can filter couples therapists, and the world is
maybe we'll do that. Why did I not think to do that for myself?
You know why I thought of it? Because I was 2 nights ago after mine and Josh's big fight, like, we're going to couples counseling. I'm going on psychologytoday.com, and then you can filter couples therapists in your state, and everything's telemed now. So now we don't even have to sneak around with a babysitter. We can hey kids, go watch an episode of your lame Wildcrats, and I'll see you when Dad and I are done with therapy. So you don't have to tell anyone about it right now. And the world is really opening up if you need some help to get through this fucking pandemic and this world and this gross political climate. I mean, it's a lot on everyone.
And I will do one more therapy plug. I will say my husband is currently in therapy because there were a lot of issues with him separating work and home, as well as communication. And he was the one that was like, I need to work on these. And that was like a huge aha moment for me. And I give him all the props.
Yeah.
Just one of us being in therapy does also help both of us.
It does.
Probably need to go back to my therapist soon just for like a check-in.
Yeah.
But even if your spouse is not willing, at least you get in the door.
Yeah.
And therapy, guys. Therapy is where it's at. So with that, call your therapist or your couples therapist.
And take your meds.
2, 3.